and welcome to Boarding All Captain, the CNU Study Abroad Office's official podcast. On this week's episode, I have Enzo joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Enzo, could you go ahead and tell us just a little bit more about your year at CNU, your involvements on campus, and your majors and minors?
Yeah, for sure. I am a senior here at CNU. I'm a psychology major with a leadership minor. I am currently the president of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and I'm on the football team as well.
Okay, very cool. Lots of involvement. Hopefully they'll watch you and be encouraged to study abroad too. Yeah. Will you just tell us a little bit about the study abroad trip that you went on? Where did you go? For what courses were you taking it for?
I went to Florence, Italy, and I ended up taking 2 psychology courses, like social psychology and culture shock psychology, and then I took 2 anthropology courses, which were just, one was called Introduction to Italy, where we literally toured Italy and learned all about it, and then one was Intro to Food and Wine in Italy, and so we got to have some wine and food tastings.
Very cool. And so were you there for a semester?
I was there the entire spring semester, yeah.
Okay, wow. And then is there like a favorite excursion that you went on? I mean, that food and wine tasting sounds pretty good, but I'm sure you went on a lot of trips while you were there.
Yeah, I definitely traveled a ton when I was in Italy, both out of the country and in the country. In Italy, I think my favorite trip was, I went to Sicily. You have to take a flight to Sicily. It's the little island that the boot is kicking in Italy.
Yeah.
And when you're there, the airfare is like 15 to 30 euros, so it's really affordable to just like take little trips like that.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful. That was my favorite one.
Very cool. And then what did you do in Sicily while you were there?
Mostly beaches. It was in the spring. It's a little bit cold in Italy, especially in the northern parts, so I just like got a little tan.
Nice.
Or sunburnt, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then what countries did you travel outside of Italy?
I got to go to the Netherlands, Amsterdam specifically. I think that was my favorite overall. I went to Paris, France to see the Eiffel Tower, and then I went to Germany, Berlin, because my aunt and uncle live there.
Wow, yeah. I've been to all those places besides Berlin, and I definitely love to go there. So, but that's really a cool opportunity. You got to see your aunt and uncle. How did you make that work?
They actually own a cafe, and they're raising my cousin
Very
there,
cool.
and so I booked a flight, and I was like, hey, I'm going to stay with you. And they're like, sweet. And so,
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really cool opportunity for sure. You were abroad. What did you do for your meals?
You definitely have to grocery shop for yourself. And so luckily food is super cheap in Italy. And so I went and just would pick up pastas, sauces, whatever I could make. Yeah.
Were you a big cook before you went abroad?
I enjoyed cooking little things, but I never had to really cook for myself given the dining hall here.
Yeah.
And so it was really fun to like experiment and figure out what I could do.
Okay, cool. And then was there a favorite traditional cuisine that you had while you were in Italy?
Yes, I only got to have this one time because it was super expensive, but it's called the Florentine steak, and it's like the traditional, like classic food of Italy, and it was like $80. So split it with somebody if you get it, but it was the best steak I've ever had.
So what was your housing like while you're in Italy?
They gave me an apartment pretty close to the school building. In Italy, like especially Florence, there isn't like a lot of space for them to just build a school. And so the schools and all the apartments are redone like ancient buildings, basically. And so you're living in history, which is really cool. But I was like a 20-minute walk from pretty much the farthest thing away and lived in a very old building, but it was usable.
Yeah, and then did you get to pick your roommates? Did you know anybody while you were going abroad?
I knew there was one girl, Logan Gale, who came from CNU. I can't obviously room with her, but I just was given random roommates. My roommates were from like Rhode Island, one was from South Africa, one was from California, so just from everywhere.
Yeah, and then while you were abroad, I mean, I'm sure some of the roommates maybe you became friends with, but how did you make friends? Like you were there for a whole semester.
Yeah, well, definitely roommates, and I started with the roommates and kind of branched out, but actually like classes. I met a lot of people through classes, especially that first class where we got to tour Italy, the Introduction to Italy one. You just make really good friendships right off the bat because you're all in like a different environment. You're all like with foreign stuff, and so you kind of just carry those people to whatever you want to do in the future.
Yeah, very cool. And are you still in touch with any of those people that you studied abroad with?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
Occasionally, it's
yeah,
hard with distance, but yeah.
for sure. Is there any point in the future that you could see yourself going back there to meet up with people or anything like that?
To Florence?
Yeah,
Definitely, yeah. I would love to go back to Italy. My experience only told me that I would love to go back for sure.
yeah. Going back to how you traveled outside of Italy, were there any like solo trips you did or other trips with like a group of people that you met that you just decided to do another trip on?
Yeah, there were, I took a lot of trips with different groups of people, which was super cool. There was one trip that I realized all of my friends were out of town, and I was like, what should I do? And so I just decided to go to Naples, Italy, which is a little more in the middle of of the country, and just took a trip by myself. Took the trains and figuring it all out. It was such a cool experience. Like honestly, to like see how I reacted to situations and to just like have the freedom to do whatever I wanted, go wherever I wanted. All the experiences felt like exploring, truly exploring, as opposed to like when you're with someone, like you're talking, you're engaging with them. It was just like me, myself, and I just seeing what there was to see, which was honestly such a cool experience.
Very cool. So, what kind of stuff did you do in Naples?
In Naples, I kind of just like researched before I went what was cool to see, and most of what I did was honestly just walking around, because Naples was cool in itself. But then I also found like some locals only beaches and was able to just meet some people, did some light conversations, nothing too big, but
Yeah,
yeah.
very cool. And then a lot of these trips that you were talking about, before you actually went abroad, did you plan them or were you planning them as you were abroad?
I was planning them when I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what I've heard from some people is sometimes it's a little bit easier to keep your weekends freer because the cost of, as you mentioned, some of the flights when within the country or right outside aren't too costly.
Yeah. They also fluctuate all the time.
Really?
So if you like, sometimes the night before you want to go somewhere, the flight is pretty cheap. So
Yeah, okay. And then going abroad, did you like budget at all? You were there for a semester. Like, how did that work for you?
yeah, I budgeted out my food specifically, just so that I knew like I divided what I wanted to spend over the entire semester by like how many days I had, and so I was like, okay, I can spend this much each week. But definitely a cost that came out of nowhere was the traveling costs. I definitely underestimated how much it would cost to like go everywhere that I wanted
Uh-huh.
to go. And like when you're there, you're like, okay, I'm here. I need to make the most of my opportunities to travel. And so I spent more than I thought, more than I budgeted on travel, but I think it was worth it at the end
Yeah,
of the day.
definitely once in a lifetime kind of opportunity
For sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
Was the language barrier hard for you at all to like navigate through traveling or anything like that?
I mean, specifically in Florence, there was virtually no language barrier. Everybody speaks English, which is awesome. I was trying to like fit in, and so I'd learn a lot of like Italian, basic conversation stuff. But overall, people speak English at the end of the day, which is really cool, really nice.
Yeah, that was kind of the same experience I had in
Yeah.
Brussels was um, I mean, I don't speak French, but
Yeah,
everyone was speaking English, so I was like, okay,
perfect. Yeah.
cool. How did the academics differ from CNU while you were abroad?
I definitely expected the academics to be pretty rigorous, given we were in another country with foreign language. However, the classes were very doable. I wouldn't necessarily say easy, but they were definitely, if you put in the time to do them, they were very doable.
Yeah, so was there just less like work that you had to actually complete, or how were they in a sense different?
There wasn't a ton of homework, which is super nice, and also the Italian culture is like lenient on due dates, which is a little different than here for sure. But if you didn't quite have enough time to get an essay in by Monday, you could get it in by Wednesday and still get full credit, which is cool.
Yeah, that sounds like really nice, especially as you're traveling on weekends.
Yeah.
They give you a little bit of comfort, a little cushion space. Did you have a spring break trip while you were abroad?
I did have a spring break trip. I ended up going to Venice, Italy, which is so cool and just a beautiful place.
I heard it was sinking. Is it sinking?
It's sinking and also drying up. We were there during a drought, which was very interesting for like or a city of all like moats. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, apparently Venice might not be there in 10 years. So
That's what I've heard.
I went there twice. So
Very cool. You got it in.
I got it in.
Yes. And then going off of that, was there any safety measures that you took to just feel more secure as you were traveling?
Definitely, yeah. And my parents gave me some tips and tricks, of course. But when I got there was some mishaps with some of my friends getting in trouble with people, and so I kind of just realized, okay, as long as you're not walking alone at night and you're like paying attention to your surroundings, you'll be totally okay. If you want pepper spray, that's one of the only weapons that's legal in Europe, so definitely okay to have that. But as long as you aren't like staring at your phone, looking at maps, nobody's gonna take your phone. Is pretty much the bottom line.
Yeah, just smart street skills
Yeah.
to just make sure you're not getting pickpocketed or something.
Yep.
Yeah, there's actually, not to make it all about me, but there is a girl on my study abroad who, as we were getting off the subway, we were walking up the stairs and she'd just taken her phone out of her purse.
Mm-hmm.
And as she was closing it, she like felt something behind her, or like she like reached in for her wallet and it was not there. She turns around, the pickpocket has her wallet.
He's just holding it.
And is holding it. And she's like, give that back to me. And like takes it. And he like runs away. So it ended up all being okay. But there's definitely like, that was the only instance on my abroad, as long as you are just having pretty smart, street skills.
I got to learn from one of my roommates, the roommate from South Africa, how to not have street smarts. He was kind of walking home at 5 in the morning, I believe, a little bit under the influence, and was looking at his phone, and he ended up getting his phone taken.
Oh no.
And it kind of sucked.
Yeah, that's rough to be abroad and, not be able to contact home for a couple days until you get a new one, I guess. But yeah. What advice would you give to a student who is about to study abroad, maybe study abroad specifically to Italy?
The biggest thing I would say is save up some money before you go. It doesn't matter how much that is, as long as you're budgeting it out. But definitely have a little bit saved to the side, because you're going to want to spend more than you think when you're there, because it's super cool. It's a fun time.
Yeah, and just have a little cushion room just in case anything happens as well. Yeah.
You'll probably be okay. If you start to run out of money, there's tons of ways to get more money, obviously, but just to be safe, save up a little extra, more than you think.
Totally understand. To wrap up this amazing podcast episode with you, Enzo, how has studying abroad changed your life? And as you're getting ready to graduate next semester, what skills did you learn studying abroad that is going to carry on with you as you go into the real world?
I definitely took some things home from Italy for sure. One of those being just like adult experience. I got to experience how I function in a foreign country where I literally know nothing and basically no one. And that was really formative, I think, in my life, just learning how to be an adult somewhere that you aren't ready.
Yeah, and the independence as well.
Independence for sure.
Yeah.
I also definitely learned a little bit of an appreciation for other cultures. Part of my family heritage is Italian, but I'm not crazy Italian. And I loved getting to like see that part of my family for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of Boarding All Captains.
Thanks for having me.